I'm a medical researcher, which means that I study diseases. In my case, I'm interested in stroke. My goal is to try and identify new therapeutic targets for the treatment of stroke, because there's not many treatments out there. There's only one treatment available and most patients can't even get that treatment. Stroke is one of the leading causes of death in Australia and worldwide, and also a leading cause of disability. But unfortunately, there's only one treatment option for stroke. So in my laboratory, our goal is to try and identify new drugs that can be used to treat multiple aspects of stroke pathology. So we're particularly interested in trying to find drugs to treat brain injury, the damage that occurs as a result of the stroke, and also treatments that can reduce post-stroke complications. A lot of patients die after a stroke because they've had an infection, in particularly a lung infection, and also because of weight loss. So we're trying to tackle stroke from a few different angles. Okay, so an example of a current project that's ongoing in our laboratory is focusing on a novel stomach peptide or hormone, which is called ghrelin. This peptide for many years was just thought of as a hormone that told you to eat. So before you have your breakfast, when you're fasting, say overnight, ghrelin production increases in the body, and once you've had your meal, then this peptide goes back down again. However, more recently, we've discovered some new interesting roles for this peptide within the body. So we've found that we've got some experimental evidence that this peptide may have protective functions in the brain and also blood vessels. So using experimental models of stroke, we've found that this peptide reduces brain injury after stroke and also protects the blood vessels from damage. Our goal now is to establish whether this peptide actually is efficacious in treating stroke, looking at brain injury and also looking at other aspects of stroke pathology, including post-stroke infections, because we also have some evidence that this peptide may actually reduce infections after stroke as well. I like the challenge of having to constantly evolve. The way the system works in Australia is that you really need to be evolving in your research. So that usually involves learning new stuff, different disciplines. I'm a pharmacologist, but I do a bit of immunology, a bit of neuroscience. It's exciting, it's a challenge, and it's what keeps me fresh. So there's a couple of reasons why, or a number of reasons why I decided to apply for a VC Senior Research Fellowship at RMIT. Firstly, one was a personal reason. I was at the stage of my career where I was ready or needed to fly the nest and establish my independent research laboratory and research program, which are both essential if I want to have a long-term career in medical research. So the second reason why I was excited about coming to RMIT was over the last 2 or 3 years, it's become apparent that RMIT are growing and they're investing in people. So they've recruited over the last few years a number of very experienced, prominent researchers within Australia, and also some younger, talented researchers, up-and-coming researchers like myself. So for me personally, it's an exciting time at RMIT. It's apparent that RMIT is going places and is expanding. And I'm excited about the possibility of being part of that. Not only being part of it, but hopefully directing where RMIT goes in the future in terms of research.